Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. For those who I don't know, my name is Dr. Kelly Dries, and I am the Executive Director for the Office of Career and Professional Development. And I apologize up front. While I'm speaking right now, I will mute myself for the rest, but right now you might hear my bulldog who is snoring right here. And I apologize for that. I thought she would stop, but she's going strong. We wanted to start the session today by actually recognize all of you and what you are managing in the current climate that we're experiencing. It's been declared the US has officially entered a recession brought on by the global pandemic. Horrific murders at the hands of police and individuals filled with hate continue to plague our Black communities, our Black colleagues, our Black friends. This epic moment of adversity makes career development feel quite secondary to these issues. So where does this fit into what we're going to be talking about today? None of what is occurring today in our minds can be separated from the topic of career. Professional development is an integral part of ending the economic disparities that impact Black communities as a result of racism. It's essential in recovering from the ruinous effects of the layoffs in this current recession. This series is only one piece in the fight for equity, recovery, and betterment. We want you to know that you're not alone in that journey. We are here in the Office of Career and Professional Development to help you get a plan in place, review your documents, take on your job search. And we are glad that you were here with us to partake in the session today to do just that. Today, we're excited to be joined by Lisa Dubler, a DC native and proud 2009 Redlands alum. Her career in HR and community building has included work at Sixth and I, one of DC's premier institutions for arts and culture, as well as the Washington Post, which I was able to tour with Lisa just last summer. Feels like a long time ago, though. At the Post, Lisa focused on diversifying the talent pipeline and designing culture building initiatives for the global media tech company. Most recently, Lisa supported a global network of changemakers participating in the Schusterman Fellowship, a highly selective leadership development program for nonprofit executives and volunteers. Lisa is deeply committed to supporting current students and alumni within the Redlands community. She also has an insatiable sweet tooth, especially for anything chocolate. That is good for me to know, Lisa. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to take it from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you to the entire OCPD team and to all of you for joining. This is going to sound a bit selfish, but I would love to invite you to use your video if that works for you, if you're comfortable with it. It just will really help at keeping this as engaging as possible. And if you would like to stay off video, I completely understand and appreciate that as well. I am going to go ahead and share my screen with you so you can see the presentation. Okay. Can I just get a thumbs up? Can everyone see the screen okay? Terrific. All right. So we are here today to talk about the power of the long game. And let me start by saying this is a long journey, the job search journey, and it is hard. So our time today is not intended to sugarcoat any of this. And I just want to invite all of you to really have some compassion for yourself as you're going through this important and challenging work, but it's also quite rewarding. So to trust the process. I'd like to hear a little bit from you to get us started. If everyone is familiar, is everyone familiar with how to use the Zoom chat box? I see some head nods, great. If you could go ahead and use the Zoom chat box to introduce yourself, share your name, your graduation year, and one word that describes how you're feeling about your job search right now. Hi, Tiara. And feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to also share. Hi, Joanne. Ah, recent grad. Congrats, Liz. Dwayne Marie, D for short. Congrats on your upcoming graduation. And how about a word that describes your search? I see Joni, interesting. Yes, the job search is definitely interesting. Tiara, hopeless. I hear you. I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask for some help on the pronunciation. Is it single? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Challenging, hopeless. Class of 2020, Francis, frustrated, unexpected, ongoing. Indeed, Owen, it is ongoing for sure. Okay. Thank you everyone so much for sharing. That's really helpful. And the goal by the time we end today is really to help, peel back the layers and help you feel a little less anxious, a little less overwhelmed, and to really feel empowered to begin your search in a way that, that is really putting your best foot forward. So let's dive in. So how we're gonna spend our time together. We have an hour together. It's going to be a bit talk heavy from my end at first, but I would love to really keep this conversational. So again, for anyone that's joined recently, I'd invite you to turn on your video if you would like, if that's something you're comfortable with. And if not, to feel free to unmute yourself at any point if you have questions while we're going. We're going to cover, whoops, I keep forwarding my slides. We're going to be speaking about 3 key topics today. Number 1, well, introductions, we've pretty much done that. The topics we're going to focus on are building your network, tailoring your resume, and preparing for your interview. And truth be told, we could spend days on each of these topics. So please know that for purposes of this time, we are just skimming the surface, and that the amazing OCPD team and alumni out there, certainly myself, are here to help support you along your journey. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions, but as I recently said, feel free to interject with questions anytime. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are from Southern, or from, well, you're all living in Southern California, I think, or many of you are probably. I am not originally from Southern California. As Kelly mentioned, I am a native of Washington, D.C. My family moved to San Diego when I was 14, and I thought that in order to fit in, I needed to learn how to surf. So I begged my parents to sign me up for surf camp. I got to surf camp and quickly realized that the other kids my age, 14 and up, were in advanced surfing. And I was with the beginner kids who are entering middle school. And I don't know if any of you remember what it's like to be 14, but you are like the cool kid. You've just finished middle school. You are now like the big fish. And all I wanted to do was to be with the advanced group. So when I found out I wasn't, I decided I'd pull out my flip phone. Some of you on the call may remember what those are. And I was going to just play games on my phone while everyone else went ahead and actually paid attention to the methodical instructions that the counselor was providing. So not only did I not pay attention to the instructions, when it was time to get into the water, I saw all of these, my co-campers who were the middle schoolers, thriving. They were getting on waves, they were truly surfing. Meanwhile, not only did I not know how to hold my board, I lost control of the board and it came up and bumped me in the nose pretty badly. So why do I share this story with you? I share this with you because what I should have done is really listen to the methodical instructions that the instructor provided, rather than thinking like I was too cool for school, I didn't need this. I knew exactly the process and it wasn't worth putting forth all of the effort with these small steps, which is exactly what I would like you to think about as you're thinking about the way in which you're approaching your job search. So play the long game. playing the long game is key. And if you remember anything from our conversation today, I would like it to be this. You must play the long game. Playing the long game helps you be more thoughtful. It helps you be more strategic in your search, and it helps you be most effective with your search. Okay, I'm just going to pause there briefly and invite anyone to share any questions that have come up. Any questions so far? And if not, I'll keep on going. Seems good. Okay, whoops. I really need to work on my slide advancement here. I'm giving you all a quick view. Okay, so building your network. I have a few questions that I would like us to consider as we dive into building your network. So here are the questions. Number one, when is it the right time to start building your network? And I would invite you to please unmute yourself and share when is the right time. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious to get your thoughts.
It's Dee. Hi.
Hey, Dee.
I think building your network can happen at any given time. A person next to you when you're studying, when you talk to them or communicate, that could be someone who you might captivate or interest you in such a way where you can start sharing your network, or in any social gathering. I just believe it can happen at any given time.
Well said, Dee. I could not agree more. Would anyone else like to weigh in? When is it the right time to start building your network?
It's Liz. I
Hey,
think
Liz.
it's really good, beneficial to use all the events offered by career office like this one. So it's really purpose, like we both alumni and student have the same purpose, just to meet more people. So I feel that's more efficient and can build a good network for the future.
Totally, yes. Going to these events is a great way to build your network. And I'll just be very vulnerable with all of you right now and say that I am also in the process of a job search, and I have been going to events similar to these, and it has been huge in helping me build connections and relationships with people. So I really appreciate your perspective there, Liz. And so really the right time to start building your network is now. You can never start too early. So when you walk onto the Redlands campus, you are networking, you are building the relationships with your professors. For the recent grads that we have on the call, those professors are going to be the people that know you best and can give you references for your first job. So you really want to try and keep those connections strong long after you graduate. Just 2 weeks ago, I was emailing with my advisor, Jack Osborne, who some of you may know on this call. And I've been out of school for 11 years. So I feel, yes, it's been a long time. I'm a global business alum, by the way. So yes, it can feel overwhelming. You want to start now. And where do you start? I think as folks on the call have said, you start with going to the OCPD. Yay, global business, awesome. You start with going to your Office of Career and Professional Development, which is outstanding. Like, it was fine when I was in Redlands, and it is really awesome now. And they didn't tell me to say this, so please go to them. You start by going on to groups like Alumni Fire, which I'm sure anyone from the OCPD team can tell you more about Alumni Fire if you're not already linked to that. You start by going to LinkedIn and building your profile. And in fact, the next person who's speaking in this series is going to do a deep dive into LinkedIn. So go sign up for that. And that's next week. Oh, thank you, Thomas, for sharing the link. Awesome. So sign up for Alumni Fire. It takes like 2 minutes. It's really easy. And we can connect on there. How do you prepare for a networking conversation? Would anyone like to chime in and speak to that? I'm learning to be okay with silence. It's not easy. And if it's silent for a while, I'll dive in. So how do you prepare? Yes, thank you, Thomas. You can also feel free to answer in the chat. How do you prepare for a networking conversation? It's actually quite similar to how you prepare for an interview, but you want to think in big, broad brushstrokes because you want to be strategic. When you're preparing for a networking conversation, you're not only thinking about the job that it is that you're interviewing or that you're speaking with the person about, you're also thinking about things like the career trajectory. What did they do to get to the role that they are now? You're also thinking about how they can help you identify your strengths, how they can help you broaden your perspective, how they may be able to help you access jobs that aren't posted. This is like a big point that I want to make. There are many, many jobs out there, and I know it's really hard to believe right now because the job market sucks, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But there are many jobs that do not get posted. And so your network is a way to get in the door with those opportunities. And of course, they can help you get referred to an organization or an opportunity. So yes.
I want to mention something. My name is Joanne, and I'm from Riverside campus.
Hi, Joanne.
I'm not looking for a job, but I'm just a parent volunteer for Valverde District here in Moreno Valley, Paris.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I work with Dr. McCormick. He also was a professor for Redlands. So
neat.
I'm invited to be part of the personnel as a chairperson to how they do the budget. So they have offered me a job, but I haven't rejected because I have other things going on as a volunteer. So I volunteer at the Valverde District, and I also volunteer in San Bernardino for the bishop and administration. That's how you network. It's my networking as the long term. When I finish my bachelor's, then I probably apply, but I have a teenager who I have so many activities going on right now that I just
so hard,
looking for a job.
Yeah, but that's such a great example of the work that you're doing to really build your network and get it in a very strong place. That's excellent. And I know that Redlands as a university is a school that really prides itself on encouraging students to get involved in the community and to volunteer, and all of these volunteering, playing a sport, being in Greek life, working on a job on campus, all of these things are ways that you can build your network. Great, thanks so much for sharing that. So moving forward here, there are times in which your network can be really effective. And one of those times is when the questions that you ask are coming from a place of true curiosity. We call these generative questions. True curiosity. So true curiosity is not something like, oh, are you hiring right now? No, that's not true curiosity. True curiosity and generative questions are questions that fall under one of four buckets typically. They're questions that you ask that are about getting to know the person. Like this, your network is, there's another human on that other side. It's not just about a transactional relationship. Your networking conversations are about understanding the industry. So thinking of questions that fall under that category, they're about understanding the role itself and what you can do to get to the next step. So as you see, that is far more broad than just about a specific job that someone might be doing. I'm gonna pause there. Any questions? Okay. That's, let me just share a couple of examples with you then of what a question of true curiosity sounds like. So here's one. What didn't you expect about your current role or industry? Oftentimes there's a lot that we don't know when we're job searching. There's only so much we can see. So asking a question like that, yes, Dallas, yes, you want to make the questions more personal. I mean, you may not want to ask a question like about their like personal life, but you can certainly ask questions about like their journey. You can ask questions about work-life balance. You can ask questions about how what their values are and how those show up in their work. Is that helpful, Dallas? Okay, sorry, I'm having a, okay. So another example of a generative question, are there certain degrees or certifications that are necessary to work in this industry? You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I just graduated with a degree, or I've just, I've graduated with a degree and I'm not looking to go back to school. That is completely fine. Revlin's degree is a very, very strong degree, and you can be very successful without necessarily going back to school. And there are some roles that may require more technical skills that do require greater education. So asking questions like, again, are there certain degrees or certifications that are necessary to work in this industry? A third example of a generative question is, what's one step you might suggest I take to learn more about opportunities in this industry? So I hope that was helpful. There are many more generative types of questions, and if you would like a complete list of the ones that I'm using when conducting informational conversations, you are more than welcome to email me and I will share those with you. So your approach is coming from a place of true curiosity. You are specific with your ask. This is key. This may sound blunt, but it is not the role of your network to find you a job. It is their role to, it is their option to support you. So you want to be very specific. So what do I mean by being specific? You want to, number one, do your research, and you want to ask them a question such as, could you share 2 or 3 organizations that are doing this kind of work that you think I should, that you'd recommend I look up to learn more, rather than something like, well, who else is doing this kind of work? You want to try and get down to the nitty gritty, use the numbers, and be really specific in your approach. Again, I'm happy to talk offline about more like specific questions you can ask. You also, again, want to make sure you've done your research. Again, this may sound silly, but if you are meeting with someone, they are sharing their time with you, and you want to honor that time that they've shared. So you want to make sure that the questions you're asking them are not something that you can easily find by a Google search or easily find via their LinkedIn page. And finally, you want to follow through and stay in touch. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the thank you note. I don't think thank you notes have ever gone out of style. I don't think they ever will. I, in fact, please don't make fun of my stationery. I, in fact, still write them. But there's so much more that you can do with follow through than simply a thank you. And I'll give one recent example. I was on the phone with my boss from 6th and I, which is the organization that Kelly mentioned earlier, and I was trying to listen for her pain points. So where was she struggling right now? Where was 6th and I struggling? 6th and I is an organization that brings in thought leaders from Senator Elizabeth Warren to Mindy Kaling. You can maybe see some of the books behind my shelf here. And they bring in 800 people 3 times a week at least. And so they're struggling with how they're bringing their events virtually. So rather than just sending Jackie a thank you note, I sent her a thank you note, and I sent her a link to a webinar that I saw that's coming up, hosted by a communications group, of how to transfer your events from IRL in real life to URL on the web. So that's just one example of ways in which you can follow up. And then this is truly the opposite of the last slide. Your network is not going to be effective when your approach comes from a place of urgency. I need a job. If someone came to me and said, Lisa, I need a job, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd feel pity for them, but I wouldn't know how to help them. You are vague with your ask. So again, you're just lacking clarity and not specific enough. You reach out without an understanding of what the person does. And so you're therefore not honoring their time, and you are not following up after an initial conversation. I want to underscore again how important that follow-up piece is. If you could have an amazing conversation, and if you don't follow up, that's it, game over. You have really like lost that connection. So really hold on to those and nurture those relationships. So just to recap, we're done pillar 1 of 3. Embrace your curiosity, do your homework, and make sure to keep in touch.
I have a question. When you mentioned to follow up, how you follow up, or how you follow up with that person? Like, I don't know how to ask the question. How you make the person think of, no, how do you make that boss think of you as when you following up, how do you make that boss think of you as a candidate?
It's an excellent question, Joanne. Joanne, can you tell me what it is that you're looking to do?
Not yet, but in the future, I was interested about this, but for future, for future, just to have open doors. I don't have anything right now specifically.
Yeah.
But it's just a question: how do you make that person think of you as a perspective, as a candidate?
Yes. Well, let's say, Joanne, that you have identified, let's say you're reading an article and you identify an article that relates to the work that person is doing. You could go ahead and send that article to them and let them know, hey, I found this article. It reminded me of the work that you do. I am still like on a learning journey, learning about this field, and I just wanted to share that with you. So it's really just like, it's not necessarily saying to them, I want to be a candidate for a job, but it's saying that you're learning and that you're open and you're available.
Okay, so that way they can think of you as a candidate. That was my curiosity.
Yes, exactly. And if anyone from OCPD wants to chime in or add to that, please feel free. It can also be something as simple as, Joanne, let's say you're connected to them on LinkedIn. It can also be something like just wishing them a happy birthday when you get the happy birthday reminder on LinkedIn. It's simple, but you're letting them know that you're thinking of them. So my old boss had this phrase of like, you want to keep the drumbeat going. You're keeping the drumbeat going by reminding them that you're there and that you're interested. Great question. Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll move on. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so tailoring your resume, this is probably the section that might be the most important, and the section that we, just doing a quick time check, that we don't have enough time to go over in total today. So I just want to acknowledge that at the Thursdays in the month of June from noon to 2 p.m. Pacific time, I will be meeting with students or alumni, and that you can sign up for a session with me to really dive into what it means to tailor your specific resume for a specific job. But right now I'm going to do more of an overview. Okay. So how long should your resume be? How long should your resume be? Does anyone want to share in the chat or pop into the conversation? Any thoughts on how long your resume should be? 1 page. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts? 1 page. However, Dallas, however long you wish, so at least a page.
I would say it also depends on publications. Like if if you've written things like that. So I would say probably at a maximum, maybe 2 pages.
Yeah, Tiara, that's a great point. And here I am in DC. Let's say you're applying to a federal job. Federal resumes can be 8 to 10 pages. So it really depends. But that's a really, really good point. So this is a trick question because there's not like a real, oh, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, check out the link Thomas just posted if you'd like to set up a time to meet for resume review. So your resume is really showing the future employer what the skills and qualifications are that you have that make you the greatest candidate for that job. And if that means you can convey that in a page, great. If it means that it's 2 pages, fine. But really, your resume is not your story. Your story is for LinkedIn. Your resume is, again, to convey skills and experience. As Kelly mentioned, I worked at the Washington Post. I was in the HR shop for 3 years, and I looked at resumes ranging from student interns to executive level employees. And so one of the things that I noticed over time is that there were resumes that were 6, 7, 8 pages long that did not have any relevancy to the actual job that the person was applying for. A recruiter will typically look at your resume for no more than 30 seconds. I realize that sounds so short, but it's true. And so you really want to tailor it to the job. Next question, how many versions of your resume do you need? Anyone want to share?
I haven't done a resume, but I customize my resumes based on what the job I'm going to apply for. For example, I was in the banking industry. So I use a lot of keywords for where the human resources are looking for in that person. So I will put those words and as part of my resume. So when he looks at it, he'll see those keywords and get the step to get the interview.
Exactly. Those keywords are so important. I see here in the chat, 1 resume per industry. And I'm so sorry. I really hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. Single. Hopefully that's right. And Dallas agrees. Oh, you go by Liz. Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Liz. So the answer to how many versions of your resume do you need? I'm just going to share with you my perspective. My perspective is that you need a resume for every single job that you're going to apply to. You're going to tailor a resume each and every time for every job. And the way that you're going to do that is based on the job description that you're working with. So before you can say, oh, I'm going to tailor my resume to work in events, that's great. But for what job? You really want to look and understand what is the job. And then you want to create, you want to start by creating a master resume. Now, master resume creation is the best because it's the opportunity for you to put in every single element of your experience on paper. So you can include, personally, I was in Spurs when I was on campus. I was in Delta Sigma Pi. I was a research assistant for Professor Osborne. I put all of those things on my resume. I've taken them off since because I've been out of school for so long, but you can put all of those things on there. And then what's great about the master resume is that's what it is. It's your master. And so when you find a job that you want to apply to and you're ready to tailor your resume, you take that master and you tweak it. You look for those keywords. I actually have multiple highlighters with me at the table that I go through and highlight the words on each of my job descriptions to know that I'm putting those keywords in. So, sorry, it's tricky trying to toggle the screen and the deck. Okay, so what are the benefits of tailoring your resume? Number 1, your resume is more likely to pass the scanner test. Has anyone heard of something called an ATS. ATS, is that resonating with anyone? No. Yeah, not a, it's yeah, for some folks working in the career space, ATS. So ATS is an applicant tracking system. And sometimes, believe it or not, you put in all this work and then your resume and cover letter end up going through this ATS before it even gets to the recruiter. And sometimes it just gets thrown out. It doesn't even make it into the recruiter's hands because you haven't included all of those keywords. So Thomas is going to be kind enough to throw in, there are 2 links where you can use, oh, terrific, thank you so much. 2 links where you can go in and actually test this for yourself. You can put in your resume, put in the job description of the role you're applying for, and it will come back and tell you what percentage of keywords you used. So this is a great resource, job scan and Skill Syncer. Thanks so much, Thomas. Yeah, job scan and Skill Syncer, that's a mouthful. They are both free, so I encourage you to use them. And I personally have used job scan and have found it quite helpful in my own personal job search. Okay. So you want the resume to pass the scanner test. You also want to convey to the recruiter that you've read the job description, understand the job requirements, and have the skills and experience to do the job. This sounds super obvious, but believe it or not, when people don't tailor their resumes, it's hard to imagine if they even read the job description sometimes. So you're putting in all this work, make it worth your while. Okay. What is likely to happen if you don't tailor your resume? So your resume, well, it'll be much less likely to pass that scanner test with the ATS, the applicant tracking system. A recruiter might never see it. And you're not conveying to the recruiter that you really not only know the job, but want the job. I feel like we've covered a fair amount, so I just want to, again, pause and leave space for anyone that has questions or comments or concerns.
Hi, I do have a question. So if we were to tailor our resume and we have a LinkedIn profile and what you have kind of doesn't really match what you have on your LinkedIn, how does that affect it?
Oh, interesting. So I want to make sure I understand the question. So let's say you're applying for a job, you've tailored your resume, you have your LinkedIn profile link on your resume, but the 2 aren't matching? Is that
yes,
right?
Or basically your master resume is on your LinkedIn, so it's convoluted. It's a lot of information, but your resume itself is the section of what you wanted your recruiter to see.
Yes, yes, that is fine. That is fine. The one point, you know, that's not an issue because what the recruiter is really going to focus on is your resume and your cover letter. The recruiter will probably not go to your LinkedIn. They may find you on LinkedIn and they may poach you for a job on LinkedIn, but they're not going to be, when you're submitting your job application, their focus is on your application itself. I don't want to go into great detail here, but I just think it's important to make a distinction that your LinkedIn should look different than your master resume. They're not one of the same. Your LinkedIn is really an opportunity, again, to be a little bit more conversational and sharing like some behind the scenes, letting them know who you are beyond just what you did at your company or organization. Seeing something in the chat here. Yes, and Thomas, yes, next June 17th at 12 noon will be an in-depth presentation on LinkedIn. So more to come on that. Okay. Whoops. So again, just to recap this, we're going to, I invite you to start with creating a master resume. OCPD has many resources that you can look at in terms of how to create a master resume. Identify those, find that job description and start identifying those keywords. Don't be afraid to use your highlighter, and then really incorporate those keywords as much as possible into the job description. All right, so we're moving on now to our final pillar, preparing for your interview. So some questions to consider. When is it best to start your interview prep? When is it best to start your interview prep? I know, I'll just say no one really likes to do interview prep. It's not exactly like the thing that people are dying to do. So yes, Dallas, yes. Liz, yes, you certainly can start it after you submit your resume, absolutely. Now, once you've decided you want the job. So I really appreciate everyone who's chiming in. What you really want to do is, in my perspective, is follow what Dallas has said. You want to start now before you even have an interview. The reason why that is because, as I'll get to a quote in a second, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. You want to practice these questions as much as possible. And Thomas is, there's a link, there's an organization called the Muse, which is a really great group that I'd invite you to all to follow. And Thomas thank you, just shared some advice around questions that you can work on as you're doing your interview prep. I really personally encourage role play for this. You can definitely practice on your own, but it can also be super helpful to practice with a friend, with a parent, with a sibling. I tried practicing with my husband and that didn't go over so well, so I'm practicing with a friend from now on. But those are some thoughts for you. And how does your preparation look different today given the current climate? This is tricky. You know, in many ways, your preparation actually can look pretty much the same in terms of how you're preparing, the questions you're thinking about, how you're going to tell your own stories. But what does feel and look different are the questions that you are going to be asking. So remembering that when you're in an interview, it's a two-way street and you're going to be asking the employer questions. You're evaluating the employer just as they're evaluating you. And so I want to dive into a couple of sample questions here around diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is an area that I worked on at the Post that you can use when you're in an interview setting and asking questions of the recruiter. So here are a few sample questions. Number one, what does it mean for your company to be committed to diversity and inclusion? Number two, how are salary increases or advancement opportunities decided and evaluated? And number three, how has the company pivoted in response to the pandemic? How do you ensure individuals and teams are still building connections? So some of that is on the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Some of that is with respect to the pandemic, but in all areas, you're getting to know what is the essence, what is the culture of the organization where you're interviewing. And then how can you be strategic? So this is the last main point that I have when it comes to interview prep. You can be strategic using something called the STAR model for interview prep. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. Can I just get a thumbs up or any comments in the channel for anyone that's worked with this methodology before? Lauren, thank you. Kelly, great. Courtney, thanks. Dallas, excellent. Excellent. Okay, Liz. Oh, good, good, good. So there's some familiarity. This is awesome. So the STAR model is super, super helpful, and it is like truly your guiding star, leading you through your interview prep. So some of the so STAR. So when you're thinking about your situation is really setting the stage of your story. That you're sharing content around what was happening at the time and what was happening specifically with regards to the challenge that you were facing. T stands for task, describing your responsibility or role in the situation. What's really important is that you're talking about yourself here. So you may have been part of a team that was working towards this, but what the recruiter wants to know is what was your specific task? A for action, explaining how you handled the situation or overcame the challenge. And again, you want to focus on like your action. So it can be tempting to say like, well, my team did this and my team did that, but what did you specifically do? And then finally, the result, what was the outcome that you reached? And if you can, you want to try and quantify that outcome. So a quick example with this, using the STAR model that speaks to the diversity work that I did at the Post. As Kelly mentioned, I was hired to diversify. Part of my reason for joining the Post was because I wanted to work in HR, but more so work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was tasked with diversifying the engineering team. And diversity means many different things, and we don't have time to get into that on this call, but there are a few ways in which the Post was specifically looking at this. They were looking to get more women in engineering, and they were looking to attract more top talent that were people of color. And so that was the situation. I was brought in to do this work. The task was that I did this work. I went and built partnerships with universities. I built partnerships with influential organizations that elevated the voices of colleagues of color in tech and brought them into the Post for events and built a social media partnership. That's the action, the events that happened, and the social media partnership. And the result is that the talent pipeline at the Post increased by 30% in a year of women and people of color on their tech team. So I hope that makes sense and that you all can come up with some examples of your own related to STAR, the STAR process. And that's going to really make it easy for the recruiter to understand your past behavior and how it will predict your future behavior. Okay, this is a quote that I've already mentioned. Oh, thanks, Thomas. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Sometimes it's like mind-boggling. It's like, do I really have to keep practicing? But the truth of the matter is you do. You can never practice too much. Now just diving in, we're getting very close to the end here. So you really want to test everything when you're getting ready for your virtual interview. You want to make sure your equipment is charged, your cell phone's charged. What a bummer would it be for your laptop to just go black out in the middle of your interview that you've worked so hard for. You want to download your meeting platform in advance. So I had Zoom on my computer already, but I actually was practicing with my sister who lives in DC, and we were like Zooming over this. So I knew like, okay, here's where you position everything. You don't want to leave anything to chance. You don't want, sometimes surprises are great and spontaneity is great, but you don't want spontaneity when you're in the job search. And finally, printing a copy of your resume and the job description for the position you're interviewing for. Always helpful to have that on hand. This is really towards the end, setting yourself up for success. Practice those STAR questions using the model. Get back to basics. I am not a dietitian or a physician, but I can tell you that it's really important that you eat well, get good sleep, and get some exercise. Prepare your meeting space, like what makes you feel good. What makes me feel good is having a candle. So I always have a candle burning when I'm working. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. That was something that I learned from a mentor of mine in college in the business, let's see, Liz, I don't know if you've taken the Business 126 class, but that's where I learned it. And be kind to yourself, which is really where I began, of just make sure you have compassion and love for yourself as you're going through this process. It is not easy. Okay, this is it, everyone. This is the final slide. So to recap everything we talked about today, you want to embrace your curiosity, do your homework, come up with those generative questions, keep in touch, whether it's through LinkedIn, through email, through snail mail, create that master resume, use the job description of the job that you want to identify those key terms with your highlighter, trusted highlighter with you. Tailor your resume to that job description by incorporating key terms. Test everything and then test it again. Practice, 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 and don't forget to get back to the basics: eating well, sleeping well, and exercising. This was mentioned a few times on the call, but feel free to sign up for a free resume review on Zoom with me Thursdays in June from 12. I'll be doing this from 12 to 2, and the sessions will be about 25 minutes long. And I am encouraging encouraging/requiring that folks bring a copy of the job description with them so that we can really use the time effectively. And that is it. And I'm sorry I went a little long, but we had some time for questions in between. We have a few minutes left, so I'll turn it over to you all for any questions.
I do have a question. What are the main questions that we should be prepared for? One of the, I remember one of the questions that they asked me, what was my weaknesses?
Yes, so it's a great point, Joanne, and there are actually a number of questions that you should be prepared for. What Thomas is going to send out afterwards has some of those key interview questions, but questions like, tell me about yourself, questions about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, questions, be ready to talk about transitions. You know, why you may have left a certain job, why you want to step into a new role, what really excites you about the organization that you're interviewing for. I hope that's helpful. And there are many other questions on that doc. Oh, thanks so much, Thomas. Oh, of course, Dallas. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and message me if there's anything I can do to help you or to be supportive with your search in any way. Yes. Remind me who you are. Are folks open to sharing whether or not they feel any different now than when they did when we started this webinar? You know, thinking back to those words that you were coming up with. Hopefully a little less anxious, a little bit more empowered. All right. Well, Thomas just put in a link to a feedback form, very quick feedback form. So if you can, just take a minute or so and fill that out. That would be super helpful information for OCPD and super helpful information for me as well. So thank you all so much for your time and for your presence. I really appreciate it. And thanks Kelly and Thomas and Courtney and Lauren and anyone else from OCPD who I'm missing on the call.
Yeah, and if everybody can join me maybe in giving a virtual hand clap for Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your insight and wisdom with us. And for those of you on that are still on, we will get an email out with the links afterwards. And please share your feedback with us because we will use that feedback to help prepare for next week's session. And we hope to see you next week as we dive in with another HR alumni expert who's going to be talking specifically about LinkedIn and using LinkedIn in your networking. All right.
Great.
Well, everybody have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
pretty smile,
Bye, everybody.
Lisa.
Take care.
Thank you so much, you too.